Welcome to the first ever Contender Connection Roundtable podcast. This will be a monthly podcast including members of the Contender Connection. We have experts in Devi, Dynasty, film, analytics, redraft, IDP, and basically anything else fantasy football related. And then actually, I think the rest of these guys have some expertise in places as well. No, I'm just kidding. We have a little bit of everything. That's why we're the Contender Connection. And so I really appreciate everybody jumping on. Basically, for this roundtable pod, we will be covering whatever is topical at the time and getting a lot of different opinions on matters so you can hear every side of the argument. I hope you enjoy this first installment as we discuss our first Dynasty auction startup of the offseason. This is a league that took about a week to create. A lot of time and effort went into it, a lot of rules and 7 pages of bylaws. It's definitely not your run-of-the-mill cookie-cutter league or anything like that. But for more on the actual league itself, we're going to be writing an article, like a joint article on ContenderConnection.com, and we'll be going through all the settings, all the scoring, basically all the bonuses. There's a lot going on in this league. It's not just your normal like one flex start 2 quarterback league or anything like that. And that should be out shortly. I'm joined tonight by Aaron Wilcox, Nathan Dearasette, Ryan Polish, Duchesne's, Dave Fantasy, and Nubs. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Doing good. Ready to rock.
Excellent.
All right. Aaron was not a part of this draft. He was the only one that wasn't a part of this draft, but we wanted an outsider's perspective, and I've been in 2 other auction drafts with him, so I know he knows what he's doing, and so we wanted to get that outsider perspective and just kind of see what he thought. But like I said, this was an auction draft, so tonight we will be going over basically our strategies going into the draft, anything that changed during the draft, values and overpays, and basically how we're feeling about our teams afterwards. But let's go ahead and get started with the spreadsheet winner, Nubs. How are you feeling? What do you think of the draft and everything else?
I didn't know I was the spreadsheet winner, so I feel even better about my team right now. It was a draft that I had an approach that I was going to take. It kind of switched up when I put in some bids for Chubb and Kamara, and they ended up being the winning bids. So instead of leaning even heavier on quarterbacks, I was able to secure Lamar Jackson at a decent price, and then kind of had to back off on bidding on a bunch of other players for a little bit because I had to let others' bankrolls kind of catch back up to mine. So I would say that I was able to gather a little bit more talent in James Robinson, and then I had some good receivers I was able to add. But I think my focus kind of switched then to trying to identify cheaper bench depth or bench upside that was kind of necessary with spending so much on those first 3 players. And then I knew I wanted to get at least 1 first-round pick because I thought it was very important to be able to have some maneuverability during the rookie drafts. I might not even use that pick, but I may trade it back to kind of double up on second rounders or something like that, or may focus on some players if they drop. But I wanted to have that flexibility because it could be potentially upside that I paid less for that I comparatively inside of the actual startup itself if I was looking to target a specific player at that time.
Yeah, definitely. How did you feel? How did you feel about the price on your first round pick? Because the prices were like kind of normalized for the first half of the round, and then it kind of seemed like it got a little wonky there at the second half.
Well, it seemed like the first couple were high because I'm assuming that they're going to be quarterbacks, and I just tried to slot myself into a spot where I liked what was remaining on the board, as well as I liked what I was paying for the picks. Like when we got down to 112, I think 112 went for probably $15 cheaper than I paid for the 107. I paid about 30, I think it was like 36 for the 107, which I'm not upset about. I actually like the upside there, and I like some of the guys I could end up being there to put in my lineup. So it might have been something where getting maybe the turn solidified in 112 and 201 would have been a good option. But based on the order in which the picks came off, that really wouldn't have been an option because I couldn't anticipate the value of the pick. But I would say I'm happy paying what I paid, and I like being where I'm at in the draft because it kind of the draft will come to me based on how other people pick their players.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Who all ended up with first round picks here?
I got one.
I got two. I ended up with 103 and 104. Nubs had 107. I stole 103 and 104 from Duchesne's.
Yeah, this was just a segue for you to brag about 103 and 104. I see that.
I just, I had to get that in there real quick.
Was that joke at the opening plan too? Was that scripted?
No, no. I wish it was, but
so just a quick comparison. I'm just looking at the prices of the picks. 112 and 201 equated to $42, where pick 106 was 43. So I think that's pretty fair value in a lot of situations.
That's what I was looking at with my two picks. I got 112 and 202, and that equated to 105. So not so bad. Tua, I'd rather those picks than Tua right now, but that's for my team analysis, which I will save.
All right. So, Nate, how'd you feel about your draft? What was the strategy? Obviously, Nate and Duchesne's were co-owners, so you guys can obviously both go over it there. But
yeah, the big thing we did was we wanted to hit two value quarterbacks fairly early. We wanted to spend roughly 80 to 90 and get two startable guys that we could lock in weekly. We got Goff for 43 and Stafford for 44. And then we paid up for Tannehill late because we thought the value was good at 51. We walked away really happy with three solid quarterbacks.
Yeah, the Tannehill one really hurt because you guys kept pushing it up. And at that point in the draft, I was looking at my bankroll and I was like, man, I don't know. I could go up a couple more bucks, but if they keep pushing it up, and then eventually it just got to the point where I couldn't do it anymore. And then I think it was Dave had Kirk Cousins at the time, and so I transitioned from Tannehill over to Cousins, and I ended up winning him for a little bit cheaper. So it kind of worked out. But I would have rather had Tannehill, honestly.
Yeah, QB7.
Devastating. That whole stretch was devastating. I had already kind of kicked it on quarterback and decided I was going to go for some middling quarterbacks later in the draft. And I thought, man, I'll end up with Cousins and Tannehill. I'm going to be fine. No. And then you guys just kept pushing those prices up, and I was like, ugh.
We had Cousins. I accidentally placed a bid on Cousins, and I'm like, God damn it, that's not Ryan Tannehill. And we were stuck. We couldn't do anything. And you bailed us out, and we went and took Tannehill right from you.
Yeah, and just a little backstory. We're not going to get into all the settings and scoring and everything, but in this league, QBs are definitely, or at least I should say good QBs are more important than even just like your regular Superflex league. We also do start 7 flex spots, so there's a lot going on. But as far as the QBs go, like the scoring is just basically all about completion rate, all about being accurate, not turning the ball over, but also producing, getting first downs. There's a lot of bonuses, even having big plays. With those bonuses, it makes some of these good quarterbacks really important, and some of these bad quarterbacks like really just untouchable. So that's kind of why we were freaking out about a Cousins or a Tannehill, because that you're starting to get to the end of like the usable quarterbacks at that point.
What do you mean? You don't like Jimmy Garoppolo and Kyle Allen as my starters?
Oh man, don't they actually have to be starting on an NFL team to be considered a starter?
They gotta be starting for some NFL team, right? Man,
to be honest,
there's a lot of teams out there. 32 of them, I think.
What was that, Nubs?
To be honest, I kind of do like that he has them as starters.
Yeah, that's true. That is actually very true. So, Ryan, take a sip of your Busch Latte and then let us know what was your strategy, how are you feeling, all that kind of good stuff.
I took a little bit of a different approach than I have in past auction drafts. In my past auction drafts, I kind of tried to go middle of the road where I kind of saved my money, didn't go after the big names, and tried to go after maybe a little bit more veterans. Didn't try to blow the bankroll on one or two guys. So I kind of went on a different approach this time with I wanted to go get my guys in a Dynasty league. I wanted to get youth. I wanted to get good quarterbacks. So I ended up with Josh Allen. I think I paid the 6th most for the quarterbacks for Josh Allen, and I have him currently ranked at QB3. So I actually thought that was good value to get Josh Allen at the 6th highest paid quarterback. And then I also came away with Joe Burrow. I'm a big fan of Joe Burrow. A couple of guys that I also wanted to go out and get was some young running backs who I thought had really good upside that could be in the league and produce as running back 1s and 2s for a couple of years here. So I ended up with J.K. Dobbins and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And then I value wide receiver very, very heavily because they just tend to last longer in the league. So I ended up going after and putting a lot of money on DK Metcalf, CeeDee Lamb. I did get Denzel Mims. John, I know you'll like that one.
We went back and forth so many times. Like it's $23, $24, $25.
I ended up getting him at a price. I'm not even a huge Denzel Mims guy, but I know he has potential with Gase being gone. And I actually got him at a price that I was okay with. So I got him for cheaper than like somebody like Ayuk. So I was okay with it. I think it was like $3 or $4 less than Ayuk when I ended up getting him. So I was okay with that as well. So what I tried to do on this auction draft was go get my guys, get the youth for a dynasty league that's going to stick around. I thought I got a decent deal with Logan Thomas. He might not be the sexiest pick in the world at tight end, but I mean, he produced this year. I think Washington's on the right track. So I think he could have success going forward as well. And then just a couple bench pieces. I think I went like 4 or 5 days without a single player since I spent so much money on the guys I just talked about. But I ended up with guys like Robbie Anderson, Nelson Aguilar, Preston Williams, Antonio Brown in my starting lineup as just kind of filler pieces to go along with the young studs for dynasty leagues that I went along with. So I actually thought it went pretty well. Now, that being said, the things that could backfire for me for this season at least is I'd have like no bench essentially. But I mean, for dynasty leagues, if maybe I don't have any injuries, maybe I have a good year. You know, you never know. Maybe some of these bench guys come along because some of them are pretty young. So one of the things that I did not do that a lot of people did though was I did not go for any draft picks. I tried to value the player that has actually been in the league and proven over draft picks. I'm going to sit this one out. Apparently, I'll just go and drink some beer while you guys draft. So I ended up, like I said, trying to get my guys go to get proven players over draft picks just for the amount of money that was being spent on draft picks. I don't like the risk that was involved for the players that I was getting instead. So that's kind of where I went with it.
Yeah, I liked it. I was actually going to bring up the fact that you didn't have any of the picks, and unfortunately, I went that route in another auction with Aaron that I was talking about before. And I can tell you that when the rookie draft comes around, it is not very fun. But I think Aaron had something he wanted to point out.
Yeah, no, I was going to bring up a little bit of strategy based on what Ryan was saying there. As far as a couple trains of thought for roster, money management, team roster building, and whatnot. And there's a couple trains of thought as far as, do you save your money to nab the steals late in your draft to boost the depth? I believe Tim brought up that he had some good depth versus Ryan said that he didn't as much. And so there's that thought. So, for example, just a couple guys that were drafted at relatively cheap cost, I believe, in this draft, like James White for $1, Duke Johnson for $1, Higbee for $1, Raheem Mostert for $2, Slayton for $2, Cam Newton for $2, Sterling Shepard for $3, Crowder for $4, James Conner for $4, 301 for $4. So there's that thought of like save up your money for the steals from that $2 to $4 range at the end of the draft. But then there's also the thought of, well, don't leave all your money for the end. There might not be anybody good left at the end. So you kind of have to weigh and see how your draft is playing out. As far as, going the extra $2 or $3 on a stud player, don't let the $2 or $3 be the huge difference maker at the end of the day. Really build your team around the assets that you want, of course. So there's kind of that balance, but those are a couple things that I thought would be interesting things for listeners to think about as they're approaching their own auction drafts.
And that's kind of a point to bring up too, is I found myself missing out on some of those players because I spent those extra dollars to go get my guys, the ones that I want to build my team around. But at the same time, it's tough to balance that depth where I didn't have any money left toward the end of the draft where I would put the guy on bid and I think I'd get him for $1, and somebody'd go bid him for $2. And then I'm like, well, I can't do anything about it, I guess. So, that was tough to see, or people that I thought were really good values, and I just couldn't do anything about it. So it was tough to balance, but like I said, I wanted to go get my guys in this draft and kind of build around that for the future as well.
Sorry, Ryan.
Hey, Dave, I know you kind of touched on your QB situation, but I don't think you really went over your full strategy, right?
No, not at all. Actually, as far as the draft picks go, I had intended to try and get at least one pick in each round and grab a couple of late, 4th and 5th rounders, maybe have a couple more than you guys did, which only worked out like to a certain degree. But I didn't get a 2nd rounder, so that's the only round like I'm completely shut out of. But I'm happy that, I got a 1st rounder, I got a 3rd rounder, 2 4th rounders, and a 5th rounder. So I feel like I've got a lot of draft picks coming in. What I did early in the draft was I tried to kind of do things differently than you guys were, zag while you're zigging, if you will. And I hammered running back early. And I know that, I've gotten a little grief off some of the running backs I took, but I took a lot of my guys that I believe in. And I got a lot of guys at value. And Travis Kelce was really the only guy that I spent a lot on early because it's just that big of a gap for me. I mean, there's no other tight end to me that's going to score even close to the same amount as Kelce. At $68, maybe I spent a little more than I wanted to for him, but I feel very confident in having him. And then I was able to get some wide receiver value picks a little bit later in the draft. Getting Allen Robinson for $39, I felt like was a really good value. I got my guy Deontay. You guys made me pay up a little more than I hoped to, but I got him for $31. I knew that he wasn't going to come cheap because you guys all knew that I liked him and that I'd probably pay for him. So, but then at the end of the draft too, we were talking about the $1 and $2 guys. I feel like I got a few guys I was really excited to pull down for $1, like Van Jefferson, Rashard Higgins, and Damian Williams from the Chiefs. I feel like he's definitely going to have a role. I think he was kind of forgotten because he sat out this year. So when he was still sitting around there super late in the draft and we were getting dollar picks, I was excited to bring him up.
Yeah, definitely. We and I don't know if I mentioned or not, but this auction was based off of a $500 bankroll. So, when we're talking about $39 and $68, hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, the Allen Robinson price, and it was a little bit later in the draft, and this is where all the strategy comes into play. Of do you want to wait? Do you not want to wait? Did you wait too long? Like that kind of thing. But I was basically just running out of money at that point, and at least to that extent, because you can only pay what you have. You can't spend over it, and you have to have at least $1 per player that you have left over on your roster. And we were drafting 35 players, so even if you had drafted 10 guys, you still had to have $25 for those guys left over. And so it gets to the point where for $39, $40, whatever, you just can't afford it anymore if you've already bid on some other players, because we have 24 players going at a time. So it's not like you're just sitting there bidding on one player, wait until they get done. It took 2 weeks as it was. We definitely don't need it to take 2 months to do this draft.
Something else I found interesting too with the price floors with like Robinson are, once we all kind of started bidding and reducing our bankrolls or available cash to bid on, there became less competition for certain players. And so when you're waiting for someone else that has money left to kind of set the market or at least correct the market, and they don't, is where you'll see certain deals like Robinson come in, which is very interesting because we had a guy, MG, who has a deep team and he got a lot of first rounders as well, not go after certain players, and you're wondering why he didn't.
Yeah, I was going to say we should have brought MG on so he could talk about his team and how he probably, I mean, honestly, like, I don't hate his team, but I bet he regrets waiting a little bit too long on some of these players. What were you thinking, Nate?
Well, kind of back on the Robinson train, I couldn't believe me and Duchesne's were talking late and we were out of money. But Brandon Cooks went for $10.
That one was
Oh,
that
Yeah,
was
no.
close.
that one hurt me too. I
one
wanted
hurt
to
the
be in on
most.
that, but I didn't have enough money left.
I had nothing left. I was
That's what Bruce was thinking.
That's one that I was really trying to. That was a player I was trying to hold in my pocket, and he completely slipped out of mind. I think we bet 8 or something on Mike Williams, maybe 6. I don't know, but
Yeah, Williams for 4.
oh,
MG's listening. MG's listening, so we can't say anything too bad about him. But oh man, what's up, Aaron?
So I would like to add just one of the things that I like to do when I'm approaching an auction draft, especially a Dynasty one, is a couple of organizational strategies that you guys or listeners can implement so they don't let the A-Robs slip through the cracks, so they know that those guys are still available and whatnot. Is just track what players are going for and what players are available. So get maybe like a big Excel or Google spreadsheet going and have each position broken down into a column, and then have your own tiered ranks preferably. But I mean, if you can't do your own ranks or you don't want to use somebody else's, but at least mark off what the guys are going for there and keep track of who's still available, especially in that tier. Because as those guys dry up, you got to either spend up or maybe, well, if I wait a while, there's still a lot of guys left. So having that is just going to help organizationally and maybe let fewer guys slip through the cracks, really. And then I also like the idea of just tracking your budget. So if you have a formula built into a spreadsheet that tells you, if you invest heavily in 3 players, let's say quarterback, top end, running back, and wide receiver, see how much you're going to be able to spend at different positions. So kind of play around with that a little bit. And ultimately, we got to preach flexibility here. Be flexible with your strategy in an auction draft because things change quickly. But having some sort of organization, I think, and I identify as something that's important to get an edge on your competition.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually went in to the draft with I created my own tiers, and then I knew going off of our last auction what the prices went for. And I'm not saying you can necessarily compare auction to auction, especially if you have different people, different strategies, different settings. It's not perfect, but I went off of that as like a basis. And then I basically took the tiers, and then I kind of created like a little formula for how much of a price drop I was going to drop per tier for each player and that kind of thing. And then once players started coming off the board, I actually adjusted the prices. So, I originally had Patrick Mahomes at $125 because that's what he went in our last draft. And then when he went for 117, I adjusted him down, and then I adjusted all the prices down because of that. Not saying it's perfect, because once you start getting into the middle rounds and stuff, prices start getting wonky and they don't necessarily match like tiers and rankings and everything, just like we said with Allen Robinson and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like at the beginning of the draft, it's actually a pretty good idea of like, are you getting a deal, a steal, or are you overpaying for a guy? And so I kind of went into the draft, and I guess this is what I always do in auctions, and I end up kind of hurting myself, but it's just, I don't know. At this point, I've done 3 Dynasty auctions, and I'm pretty sure that I'm just going to keep doing it for all the auctions I do. And it's like I play price enforcer. Like I enforce the prices on certain players, and I just feel like if they're not going to go for what I feel like they should be going, then I'll just take them, even if it's not necessarily a player I like. And, I ended up doing that with a couple of the players, that I have, like Dalvin Cook I'm not the biggest Dalvin Cook fan, but I know that he's, valuable, and I know that, he should go for a certain price. And so I'm willing to pay that price. And I thought I got him at a pretty good price. We're at $68 compared to some of the other players that, like, Saquon went for, 85. The CMC went for 90. Nick Chubb went for 68. Or 69 or something close to that.
Nice.
DeAndre Swift went. DeAndre Swift went for 63. So all prices around there. I feel like if you're just looking at a list of rankings, Dalvin Cook's going to be up there, if not higher than at least a decent amount of those guys. So I'm not saying it's necessarily a great strategy. I'm just saying it's probably something that I'll always do. Just making sure that players are going for the right price in the beginning. The only problem is it kind of hurts you in the end because then you don't have as much money to go get those steals like a Brandon Cooks for $10 and things like that. So now we will go ahead. If nobody else has anything to throw out for like their strategies or anything like that, then you had one, Duchesne?
No, I was kind of itching my chin, but I never really went over mine. I play Enforcer like you, John, and this time I tried to just take value where it was. I had my two guys. I had Tyreek and I had Saquon. No one was going to touch the bids. You could just push me up as much as you wanted, but you weren't going to get them. I got them for about 150, which is a pretty decent chunk of change. But like Nate said, he's my Coney. We wanted to try and get 3 decent quarterbacks. In the last auction I did, I spent all my budget on Lamar and Kyler. So I was down with taking that approach, and I was trying to get more depth this time, but I ended up still getting like 17 $1 players, half of our roster. I like the targets we got with it, but we did play a little bit of Enforcer, which kind of hampered us in the middle to the mid to late game. And I mean, my favorite pick of ours, I think, was Robert Woods at $25. That one was sweet. Felt good. He was in this league. He was the wide receiver like 14, 13, 14 last 3 years, going at 2 like late second prices. We got the 2 picks, the 112 and 202. So the late first, early second, like kind of wrap around, which I'm happy with what we spent there. I'm happy with the team overall. Wish we had more depth, but we got Marlon back, so we're all good, baby.
Yeah.
I honestly had no idea that Tooney was joining us tonight.
There he is.
He's also in the league, and obviously this is his first podcast in quite some time. So he's probably going to be a little rusty. Give him some time, just bear with them. But what's up, Tooney? Oh, and he's muted. Yeah, told you it's going to be rusty. It's okay. We're going to work out all the kinks and.
There it is.
Sorry. Yeah, I just got out of another meeting. I've been jumping Zoom to Zoom like all day. So I was like, I don't even know if I'll be able to make this in time. I'm glad that y'all are still on right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we basically just finished up, kind of going over our teams, our strategies, like that kind of thing. We haven't really started diving into like how amazing my team is yet. So why don't you go ahead and talk about your team, your strategy going in, basically anything like that.
So one of my strategies going initially, I was trying to play the long game and just like wait to buy people. But then I saw there was going to be quite a few people doing that. So I tried to adjust my strategy on the fly a little bit. And it's because it's one RB I went after who I think is the best RB. And I thought he was at a very reasonable price compared to what he's gone in the past with CMC, right? Like we did 2 auctions last year where CMC was easily like, second or third highest player. And here he wasn't even, I think there was probably 6 players. I have to go back and look at MFL, but there is at least a handful plus of players that cost more than him. There were 6 players more. Perfect. Yeah. So to get like the 7th guy who's probably, still considered a top 2, even in Superflex leagues, like draft wise, I thought that was pretty solid. And then I wanted to really hit tight end heavy because I think that in tight end premium leagues, sometimes people underestimate how good these tight ends can be, and especially in a league like ours where you can play them in the flex, and they're going to be more valuable than a lot of other guys. So that's why I grabbed Kittle and Waller, who were, I think, going to be guys that outscore a lot of wide receivers that went ahead of them. Particularly Waller, who was like $33. So he was really cheap compared. I didn't think he was going to go that cheap. Otherwise, I might have let Kittle go let Kittle go and spent that money elsewhere. But that was really kind of a strategy I wanted, was strong tight ends, get one good running back, and then make sure I had at least 3 starting quarterbacks. And I think I did that with having Brady for next year. And this is just for next year even, right? I have Brady, who I know is going to play till 50, so he'll be a cornerstone of the team. And then I wanted to make sure I got, another quarterback that's going to have a lot more longevity with Dak and then from there it was just kind of filling in the spots, and that's why I grabbed guys like Big Ben, who some people don't think will even play next year, but I think he comes back at the very least. He has too much money to not come back. And then Wentz, who is more of a lottery ticket, but I know Tim loves Wentz a lot, and he's someone I think he's going to be a starter, whether it's in Philly, whether it's in Indy, whether it's somewhere, he's going to be a starter. But I think that's valuable to have, multiple starting quarterbacks in a league like this.
Yeah, and just we didn't really touch on the scoring. We said we were going to do that in the article just because it'll be a lot easier than just sitting here for 2 hours trying to explain everything that's going on. It took me like a week to explain it to Duchesne's, like what was going on with this league and all the
I didn't read
everything.
That's sort of something I wanted to say about this league is like it has crazy bylaws and everything, but you shouldn't be afraid to try something like this because at the end of the day, it is still fantasy football. Like I still just drafted guys that I liked. I looked at the standings just to see like the difference of how the scoring will affect some guys. Like Ryan Tannehill had a really good year, but at the end of the day, it's fantasy football. Draft good players. But
I wanted to point out that that Waller, I think he was like 17th overall in scoring last year in this scoring setting, something like that. So, Tooney's strategy of going after tight ends definitely was not a bad one. Obviously, it'll depend if Waller can continue and all that kind of stuff, but definitely not a bad strategy. But I think Aaron had something he wanted to touch on.
Yeah. So not to spend the whole podcast talking about price enforcing or anything, but I did want to add, just from a different perspective, that I don't actually like that strategy as much anymore. I was somebody who initially liked doing that, but I don't like the idea anymore of bidding guys just because they're going cheap, as it leaves you with the team you don't really want, the guys that you weren't really wanting to draft in the first place, but you're saying, well, they're good value. And really, values become reaches quickly in Dynasty. So Todd Gurley was a great value last year until he wasn't, until it was a reach 2 months later. So, and I made that mistake. Thankfully, I could trade away Todd Gurley at some point, but just as reaches become values in Dynasty. So I believe that sometimes price enforcing can hamper your team building as well. But it just all depends on the player, because if you really like the player and he's going for cheap, it's win-win. So it's just it's dependent on the circumstance, but that's why I don't always like that strategy.
Or if it's Odell Beckham for $17.
Yep. Yep. Oh man. All right. Yeah, we really should have brought MG on for this one because he's going to take a lot of heat apparently. So we. Yeah,
he bullied us at the end there.
That's true. He did.
He took like 15
waited.
people for under $5. Everyone had $1. He's like 3, 2.
Yep.
Oh, you have Sony Michel for 2, 3.
I love that kind of stuff, though. That's awesome.
I'm just mad because I couldn't bully other people.
I'd like to once again apologize to Ryan. I think I did that to him like 6 times.
I screwed myself where I was at. I think I had to draft 18 players at $1, or I couldn't even bid $2. It was that bad. So I mean, yeah, I went and got my guys, but every time I put somebody up for $1, Nubs would put 2 on it, and there's nothing I could do about it. I felt helpless.
Oh, a little bit of a strategy portion too when it comes to end of draft. MFL has a nice page that allows you to see number of players remaining for people to bid to fill their roster, as well as available dollars to bid. So there are guys that were nominated. What I kind of looked at was what was the max bid. And instead of going like $1 less than their max, I would just go to their max if it was like $3 or $2. Obviously, other people could bid on these players as well. But the players that were being nominated and kind of doing a little bit of back and forth, I just kind of sent it to their max, which is $2 or $3, so they could never come back over the top, which would actually save me $1 because most of the time they didn't want to put their max bid on this player, so they would just kind of back off. Now, it's not always perfect if you don't really want the guy, but if it's really a target of yours that you want, like just speaking a little bit of strategy, I wanted to leave this draft with Lynn Bowden, Paris Campbell, and Chris Herndon. And they were all cheap guys I wanted, but I knew that I was going to go to a certain number and I was going to make sure I got them.
when I was struggling at tight end, I was trying to leave Herndon off the board, and I think I don't know if I was the one or somebody else put him on for $1, and then you ended up outbidding us, and I was like, God darn it, like so frustrating.
All right, so real quick, Rom from Lithuania sent in his thoughts on his draft real quick. I just wanted to touch on that before we start, really diving in and cutting throats and stuff. But he basically said with it being, with it being a one running back starting league, that he kind of wanted to just kind of avoid running backs altogether, not worry about a position that, obviously a lot of the top guys are a little older right now, that kind of thing. So he wanted to basically just kind of go into like a rebuild or productive struggle or whatever you want to talk, whatever you want to call it. But I like the way he did it though. He went and drafted Kyler, and he paid a pretty price for him. He paid $102, but it's not terrible. I didn't mind that price at all. And then he got the 101. So obviously, he's gonna get Justin Fields, right? No, I'm just and then he also went and stole my heart and stole DJ Moore, broke my heart and stole DJ Moore, and that's basically his like main core. But then he has a lot of picks and obviously like he's preparing to have a very early pick next year, which he talked about when adding another quarterback next year. So that was kind of his plan, was just to do the productive struggle, spend big on a quarterback or two, and then just kind of worry about the rest later on. And I definitely don't hate the way he's building his team. Obviously, you have to hit on certain draft picks and things, but it's just that's how it works. So, who wants to jump in and say who they thought did the best job in the draft? Who they thought was an overpay? Who they thought was a steal? Anything like that? Don't all go at once.
I thought you all did a terrible job, and I can't wait to smack you all. No, I don't know who did a good job. Someone else can take this. I just wanted to talk shit for a second.
I actually voted on when you put the vote up to who had the best team. I actually voted for Timmy's team. I thought he did a really good job. His team is really good, well put together, good depth, good pieces all around the board. So I thought Tim did a really, really good job. As far as tooting my own horn, I actually thought Josh Allen I paid $90 for him, but he actually was the 6th quarterback as far as number wise to go. And I actually have him ranked in my personal rankings up at 3. So I actually thought I got a pretty good deal for that. Justin Herbert went for $5 more. So I actually thought I got a really good deal on Josh Allen. But overall, team wise, I actually really like the way that Timmy approached the draft and put his team together.
Yeah, take that, Omega. Paying $5 more for Herbert.
Yeah, he paid up. I like Omega's team. He kind of doesn't have a real running back, but he's got good picks. Justin Herbert, Hurts, and yeah, I'm still looking. I should have. I didn't know we had a poll for this. I would have looked at this. Shit.
It was actually team name. Ryan just didn't read it right. Who has the best team name, not who has the best team. But it's all good. He still voted for Nubs, and that works.
I'm going to revoke my vote and go toward my team then. I'm voting for mine.
Well, obviously, we haven't really sat down and gone through all of our teams and who we have on, or every player that we have and stuff.
I'm still figuring out my team.
So it'd probably be terrible to sit here and say who has the best teams and all that kind of stuff. But I guess just who do you think were the best deals? Who do you think were overpays? Things like that. We can go over the prices as well.
In this scoring setting with the QBs, how they are, I think there's a very big drop off when it comes to QB 16 or below, where the average is pretty much 15 points a game or less. Where, because this is for accurate quarterbacks who kind of take risks and push the ball downfield a little bit more and are actually good at it, players like Brady, Matt Ryan, Tannehill, Matt Stafford, those guys are going to be good values because they're going to still put up a decent amount of points above the median. And there's a big separation between those quarterbacks that produce and the ones that don't. Just the really average quarterbacks that aren't good, they're just spot fillers on a lot of super flex teams. They're not worth that much in this league format. So getting Brady for like 20 and like Matt Ryan for like 21, Crescent and myself, I think those were just really good picks, because even if you look for 2 or 3 years, you're getting that production of most likely top 15 quarterback play as your QB2 or QB3. And I just think that's worth it.
What did you guys think of Levi's price on Aaron Rodgers of $63? I honestly don't know how to feel, because it feels like it's a little high, but then you look at the Rodgers season this year and the scoring that we have actually bumps up Rodgers even more. So, Rodgers was unbelievable in our scoring system. And so it's tough to say it was an overpay, but at the same time, it feels like it was an overpay. $63 out of $500 for a 37-year-old quarterback.
It feels like an overpay to me. Well, I really wanted Rodgers too. I mean, like, that was one of my early quarterback targets. I was like, I really want to get Aaron Rodgers, because I felt like you could get him at a deal, and that's why when the price kept going up, I was like, dang, man, I guess I can't get him at a deal.
I feel like it was expensive. It's expensive until I look who went for $2 more at 65. Cam Akers by Dave here.
Dude, Cam Akers is actually my favorite Dynasty player, I think, at this point.
That's fair.
I don't mean that I think he's like the number one running back or anything like that. I just really feel like he's going to return value. Even though I paid $65 for him, I still feel like he's going to return a lot of value.
Second youngest position player in the league.
Yeah, I love how young he is, and I don't know, I just think he's got that it factor, and I really think that the Rams are going to give him a substantial increase in opportunity share.
Yeah, McVay is known to ride his running back pretty heavy. I like Akers, but it was also, I think it happened early in the draft, so we're still figuring out the market. Like, I mean, I think Dobbins went really expensive at 68. I love Dobbins, but that was just sort of a lot of times in this, I was like, I'm not going to be the guy to pay up for this dude. Like, I paid 85 for Saquon, and that was the RB2 was a 108 in a linear draft, the 8th highest player. That was my guy that I'll pay up for, but Dobbins, man, he kind of disappointed this year, but I wish the best because I love the kid.
I actually think Rodgers. So Levi just put right. He was QB1 in this format, but the year before he was QB11. The year before that he was QB14. I'm looking at points per game. As far as like overall points, he was, I think, 9th and 10th the previous 2 years. And so, I think he's going to be a top 10 quarterback. And so if you think you're getting 3 years out of him, I think that's a valid bid, and that's a good spot to get him.
And he was sandwiched between Tannehill and Burrow, and I would definitely rather have Rodgers over the next 3 years than both of those.
Yeah, it went early, so I think Rodgers went early in this draft, I'm pretty sure. So it just felt a little expensive, I think. But looking at the full picture now, I don't think it's so bad.
If you are convinced that your team is going to win, like coming right out of the gates, then I have no problem with going with Aaron Rodgers for $63. But if you are, at all not sure about your abilities to put together you got 1 in 12 chance, maybe a little bit better depending on how good you think you are. But but ultimately, I don't know if I like the risk of investing in that old of a quarterback. But maybe it's a little bit of my ageist. I know there's that three-year window of potential production. However, not everybody in your league wants to trade for somebody that old if things start going south. So I kind of liked Tua for $47. I didn't mind Stafford for $44. I think he has more years left. And if you want to point out injury concerns, Rodgers has those as well. But I won't get into the whole injury thing right now.
Would you rather have Matt Ryan and Matt Stafford or Aaron Rodgers?
That's a great question. I probably would prefer the other guys, but I don't know if I want Matt Ryan right now either. I don't know what he went for.
They went for the same amount, 62. Rodgers was 63, so
yeah,
it's close for me too.
Now, I think that is actually a good point, though, with auction drafts. Just because the values line up and everything doesn't mean that that's actually like the true value of the players. Because, like we said, some players end up being steals because no one has money left, or they've already paid for 2 quarterbacks and they're not going to pay for a third, or whatever it might be. So, it's probably something that's important to listen to or think about when you're going into an auction draft or after an auction draft. Like, don't just look at the numbers and be like, okay, so 42 plus 24 equals this player. No, like, it doesn't work that way. It can. I mean, it's possible, and you could get close, but it doesn't mean like that's a good trade per se. But Levi's all right. We pissed Levi off. He's still going off about Rodgers over here, and rightfully so. He's not here to defend himself. So
where are you at? Get in here.
We'll give him a little screen time. But actually, Ron brought up a couple of players that he thought were good values and then overpays, and it was he thought that Lamar Jackson for $82 was a good value, Saquon for $85. DeAndre Hopkins for $51. DeAndre Hopkins for $51 definitely seemed like a good value for me. And then he thought that the late first and the early second round picks were good values, which is probably true. And I could probably tell you what those were here in a second. The late first started going like 38, 36, 31, 33. 109 was actually cheaper than 110. So that shows you how auction drafts go.
The guy got him.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. So it was all MG, but then 111, 27, 112, 27, 25, 21, 21, 16, 15. So it starts dropping off there, but definitely some good values because there's probably going to be some good players. And then Rom thinks that the overpays are Aaron Rodgers, Derrick Henry for 71, Calvin Ridley for 60, and Travis Kelce for 68. Excuse me. But he also does bring up the fact that he is an ageist. So
he's a huge ageist.
Yeah. So, it probably makes a lot of sense that that's who he's going after. And then Levi's actually saying that he thinks Ayuk for 27 might be the steal of the draft, but I feel like he's a little high on Ayuk.
That was the same exact. Well, I think it was 26. There was a couple of second-year guys last year. DK Metcalf was a $27-ish guy last year. Somebody else was. So like, that's like the window. Like, I don't know. It's weird how it lined up. It like as it did last year. It seemed like second-year guy kind of had a decent year. He did. He surprised me actually. I was a little down on him coming in, and he had quite a good year. I think it's getting underplayed a little bit, but I don't think steal. I don't know if I go that far. I think it was just right.
Yeah, I feel a little nervous about Ayuk in general, just because so much of his production did come without Deebo Samuel and without George Kittle.
2 guys that can't stay healthy.
Yeah, I mean, if he's going to play a lot of games without him, then he's going to be great. Yeah. But that's the only thing that I'm a little nervous about is what he's going to look like when they're both on the field.
That offense will just probably be a juggernaut-ish. I mean, not with Jimmy, but
if they bring in Matt Stafford, like people are talking about, then I think that could be truly exciting, for San Francisco as an offense in general.
Ayuk's also not the most healthy himself, right? He missed multiple games and he had injuries himself this year too. So that's something else, wide receivers just get hurt, and especially wide receivers that get the ball in space and have to go through a lot of defenders. Like
that's that offense,
and that's that offense. So that's why you're probably going to see that happen with those types of plays called.
I don't mind the price, but there's a difference between minding the price, loving the price, and thinking it's a steal. So I don't mind $27.
Brandon Cooks at $10 is the steal of the draft.
Brandon Cooks was a steal. Although we had a little, and once again we didn't go over everything, but we have houses, we have divisions, and so we had a division chat with Nubs, Tooney, and myself.
Delusion.
And so. we actually, we were discussing some strategies and stuff. We have to make our division, our house good, because there's bonuses for who wins the division. There's bonuses for who has the best division and stuff like that. So we definitely had some strategies involved, and Cooks was one of those for sure.
Ravenclaw did not have money talks. It was a very
We got cutthroat.
Oh yeah, we were at each other's throats there. There was very every man for himself. We are not getting the $20 discount on next year's fucking. They are playing to win it. They don't give a shit about the house.
Oh man,
I'm not me either. I'm not gonna say just that.
Aaron, it looked like you wanted to say something.
Well, yeah, we were just talking about a couple of values, and I also saw Curtis Samuel going for $7, Michael Gallup going for $8, and maybe Michael Gallup's a post-hype type of guy to buy. Just anticipating him entering free agency maybe after this year, and we've seen what he's been able to do. But Curtis Samuel, seeing how he finally, played in a good system that utilized his strengths this year, whether he goes somewhere else, whatever the case is. Those are just a couple of guys I thought were undervalued. And I know I shouted out a bunch of guys for like $2, $3 earlier, so we don't need to rehash that. But also, there's some draft pick steals to be had along the draft too. So like $210 for $7. Meanwhile, some of the stuff after that was very expensive. So I thought that was a great deal as well.
Yeah, and Levi, to give him a little bit of grace, because we were giving him so much guff earlier. He did get 301 for $4, and then 302 went for $6, 303 went for $5, 304 went for $7, 305 went for $6. So it he definitely got a steal there. As much of a steal as you can say saving like $3 is, but hey, when it comes to the end of the draft, that $3 makes a pretty big difference.
Nominating picks early. That's why
I paid $5 for 307. Which is, considering those other prices, was probably a little bit too high.
I think as well with the auction draft setting, for those that either haven't done it or haven't done it in a limited capacity, a lot of it is timing, because 301 I think was nominated pretty early, and based on what was still left on the board, people would have considered the extra $4 or $5 to bid that up, or wherever we were at could have been used on different players later in the draft. When those started to kind of soak up, the draft picks were kind of what remained in certain areas, and people started to value the draft picks versus what was left on the board. So even trying to either sneak a pick through or a player through could work depending on when, but it also could backfire depending on when as well. So it kind of goes back to everyone else's strategy about when to spend their money and things of that nature, who they want to go after. But I think that was a big contributor. We actually got into a setting of people just nominating 5th-round picks because they know no one was going to outbid them on them. And it was we were able then to secure roster spots where you weren't having to focus on, how many $1 players I'm going to get. At least I have these picks for the taxi squad.
Yeah.
I kind of when I realized that I wasn't going to get like a 2nd round pick or one of those 1st round picks, I kind of just disregarded the whole 3rd, 4th, and 5th round picks in general. For me anyway, when you look back at the prices and you look back at other rookie drafts that you have done in the past, who are you really going to get? Or what are the odds that your 3rd round pick, 4th round pick pans out? I know the percentages aren't good. So would you rather have a guy like Naheem Hines or pick 3?
Oh, yeah. I found out that I was a big Colts guy, I guess. I took a lot of Colts. I love Colts players for some reason.
Right, and like I took Logan Thomas with $4, and a lot of the 3rd round picks went for more than that, or somebody like KJ Hamler who's actually somewhat produced, or somebody who's somewhat proven, Jamison Crowder, people like that, and that's why I just kind of disregarded once you got into the 3rd round picks, how much they were going for, that I just had no interest in those.
Yep.
Yeah, I will add, just based on, I think it's Jacob Vines, fellow student physical therapist, actually. He does a bunch of stuff on Twitter, but he puts out hit rates for rookie picks. I think in recent years, the 4th round of rookie drafts has been fairly comparable to the third round. Early third, I think, is a different story because you're still getting some guys slipping there, like Chase Claypool. Maybe in some leagues, Laviska Shenault fell that far. Ayuk, no, not Ayuk, but a few other guys fell that far. So, but yeah, that's kind of the thing on draft picks is like you said, it's kind of a crapshoot in that third, fourth round. But if you can secure some ones late for $1, you can try squeezing that through.
It makes a lot of sense, though. Especially if you can get even a semi-established player for $1, late in the draft. Like going back through what I did, I paid $2 for a couple of fourth rounders. So that's twice as much as $1, obviously. But I mean, considering I could have gotten a player that is at least semi-established for $1, and I paid $2 for these draft picks, we don't even know who I'm going to wind up with. It's not like a giant risk, but there's some risk involved there.
Yeah, I think the whole point. The whole point of doing this roundtable for, especially about this auction draft was, a lot of people are going to be doing startups this off season. I think, auction drafts are getting more and more, used and everything. And obviously Sleeper is going to be coming out with the auction drafts here pretty soon. And that'll probably, make it even more, used and everything as a format. So we have to, I think it's just important that it's probably not talked about enough, but I don't know if there's actually a right or wrong strategy because like Tim was saying, you can nominate somebody early and you can get a steal like Levi did on 301, but you could also nominate him one player before that and he might get bid up to $8 just because the right person has money and doesn't have anybody to bid on. I don't know that, at least maybe a smarter man than I has figured it out, but I definitely have not, even after looking and listening and all that kind of stuff, I have not figured out what the perfect strategy is because we've seen people go all in too early and not have anything later on. We've seen people wait too long and not have the studs, and we've even seen people kind of do in between and doesn't necessarily mean that they're guaranteed anything. So we just kind of wanted to go over everything. We're going to be doing these roundtable pods once a month. They're not always going to be about auction drafts. They're definitely not always going to be about our drafts. We're going to be talking about basically whatever's going on at the time in fantasy and dynasty, Devy, rookie, whatever, all that kind of good stuff. Get some IDP in there if Duchesne's is feeling jumpy and and all that kind of stuff. But if you guys have anything else to talk about for as far as this league goes, go ahead and jump in. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and get out of here tonight. What's up, Toonie?
One thing I wanted to add to that discussion about like these late picks is that when you have a taxi squad, it makes it a little different, right? Like it's better to have these dart throws. Like I look at an auction league last year where there's only 4 rounds, but like in the 4th round, there were guys like Troutman, Lynn Bowden, even people like Donovan People-Jones going, and Quintus Cephas. And if you can get someone like that, throw them on your taxi squad and let them, see if they're worth something more next year. That, $1 that you spent on 502 is now, worth someone that is potentially a $4 player the next year, right? So like it's just like an investment.
Yeah, and with Cephas, he had the 10 targets in week 1. You probably could have turned around and sold him for a third at the very least or something just after 1 week. So that just goes to show you that even though you're definitely not guaranteed anything, especially when this is a 35-man roster when you include the taxi squad. So having some 5th round picks definitely does not hurt anything.
And having those taxi squads filled then lets you go out and just grab people off the waiver wire that are those established players or someone that has established themselves in some way, right? So it just gives you more flexibility, and that's what I think like those late picks can do for you.
I like it. Anybody else got anything else? No?
Go
ahead.
Our approach on tight ends is very different in terms of everyone in this league. Like Ryan getting Logan Thomas for $4. Logan Thomas was a producer last year, but he also didn't cost very much versus paying, 68 for Kelsey. And what did Kill go for? 53, something of that nature. So it bounces all over the board where people were valuing or taking shots at the prices and seeing if their bid stuck or if they had to, rebid or if they just were out. I spent $13 on 5 players and I'm very happy about it. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, that
What
makes
were you-
sense. I did spend a ton on Kelsey, but then I wanted to grab some high upside tight ends at some point, and I just ended up spending a total of 16 on Evan Ingram, Harrison Bryant, and Hayden Hurst, which I feel like all three of those guys could potentially be solid.
That's awesome.
Who were the upside guys though?
I love it.
I love it. Aaron, it looked like you had something to say. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. Quickly, I was just going to mention that you should nominate. Well, I believe that people should nominate guys early in the draft that they don't want on their team to flush out the money, make other people bid up on. Let's say you're really not into, I mean, Derrick Henry. I don't know. You can just pick any X player that's worth a lot. Maybe throw that guy out there right away in the draft. People will tie up a lot of their money in that, and that might give you at least a slight advantage getting some of your other targets in your draft. So if you're consistently doing that your first couple nominations, first couple days of the draft, whatever the case is, I do not mind that strategy at all.
Yep, I like it. Although, like if you're price enforcing, doing that can also get you in trouble, like I said, but it's just part of the game. So appreciate you guys listening to this. Hopefully we've given you a little insight on an auction draft and everything. Definitely go check out the article that we're going to be putting out in the next couple of days, all about this league. Like I said, the scoring, the settings, our teams. We'll have all that. It's going to be a pretty big article. We're all going to be contributing to it. So you'll get all the different strategies and everything as well. A little bit more even than you heard tonight. We'll be back in a month with another Roundtable pod, and at that point, we'll probably be talking about rookies if I can just kind of guess at this point. But I appreciate you guys listening, and for now, we're all cashing out. Say bye, guys.
Thanks a lot.